Okay, well, it's a minute past the top of the hour, so why don't we go ahead and get started? We may have more people joining us as we go, and we may see that number climb as we enter into the webinar, but let's just go ahead and get started for the folks who are here. And just want to welcome you back to our continuation of our 2021 annual conference, and welcome you to this CWR Academy webinar, Data That You Need to Know for Vocation Communications. And I like Carol, in preparing for this, mentioned something that for all you data nerds out there, and I'm one of those, so I've been looking forward to this very much. So my name is Robert Cogswell, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange and a member of the CWR Education Committee. A lot of times we will offer a prayer, but because this is a continuation of our conference, we're just going to get right to it. So what you're seeing on screen is you're viewing our speakers only. So it's a little different from Flash Conversations where we're not seeing everybody, but you can still ask questions. So we encourage you to use the chat and the Q&A features, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the session. We'll try and, as we progress through the slides, we may pick up a few questions as we go, but we'll also do that at the end as well. So, and if there's any unanswered questions, the presenters, as they often do, are very generous with their time, and they're very willing to chat with you later via email, so you can reach out to them that way. We are recording the session. Sessions are recorded for later viewing on CWR's website. So if you have to duck out or you want to come back to something that was said, you can revisit it a little bit later on the website. So one tip about this particular session, we've got lots of information coming your way. So the slides are full of info. So I would recommend, if you have the option, to go ahead and view it full screen in case you're watching this on a tablet or phone, or maybe have it minimized on your screen. You might want to bring it back to full screen to see what's presented. So let's go ahead and get started with our speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce Carol Schuck Scheiber and Sister Charlene Hendricks. And it's one of my favorite names to say, Carol Schuck Scheiber. And she is you have to say it really fast, like it's one word. Carol Schuck Scheiber is the publications editor for the National Religious Vocations Conference, NRVC. She edits and writes for Horizon, the professional quarterly from NRVC, and as well as Vision, the annual guide to Catholic religious vocations. You probably know her. She's been a CWR member for many years, and she's also the mother of 3 young adults. So she has had an up-close view of the Millennial and Gen Z discernment journey. And Carol, I have to say, editorial, I've always appreciated talking with you. You're very thoughtful, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. And also Sister Charlene Hendricks, who rejoined NRVC, the NRVC team in January of 2021 as the Director of Membership, but she's also previously served NRVC as coordinator of programs and projects from 1999 to the mid-2000s. And she's a sister of St. Mary of Oregon, and her ministry experience includes middle and high school teacher, school administrator, community vocations director, assistant archdiocesan vocation director. So she's really into vocations, right? And community leadership. So without further ado, please welcome Carol Schuck Scheiber and Sister Charlene.
Thank you, Rob, for your introduction. Carol and I are eager to share information from the recent NRVC CARA study on religious life today. Our title for this workshop is that we're going to be sharing with you information you need to know to help you in your efforts to communicate about vocations. We also presume that you want to know this information, and that's why you're here with us today, and we're so glad you are. Thank you. We're going to try to keep our comments to about 2 minutes per slide so that there will be time at the end or in between for your questions and your comments. Next slide, please, Brian. This 2020 report on religious life today is actually the second research project of NRVC with CARA in recent years. The other one was in 2009 and has been useful to see the comparisons on various topics between the two research studies. You'll be seeing some of those comparisons as we go through our presentation today. There were three main sources of information for this research. The first, of course, would be with the major superiors. They were able to provide lots of good information because they reported on the number of novices and temporary professed during the time of this study, which is from 2003 to 2018. So a 15-year period of those who were in formation. They were also the source of the addresses so that the surveyors could contact those in formation. The survey of the major superiors got a very good response, and that was a little over 500 people out of a possible 700 men and women major superiors who responded to the questionnaire. Our second source of input was a very important group, of course, and that's those who entered during that 15-year period. And lastly, there were 13 focus groups of newer members who responded to many questions. Our hope was to obtain accurate data about what attracts these people to religious life, what their experiences and their backgrounds are, as well as how they view the future of religious life. It is interesting and exciting to learn about them and their hopes. This presentation is really just the tip of the iceberg of what was discovered. We will be sharing sources of information with you so that you'll be able to mine the wealth of this research if you wish, those of you who like to do the deep dive. Next slide, please.
So one of the things we wanted to, or that we had acquired with doing this, was an overview of who are these newer members and just getting some numerical idea of how many are out there. The study identified 3,318, to be precise, women and men who entered religious life during that time period of 2003 to 2018. And we found that this is an underreported good news about religious life, that the rate of entrance has actually held steady for the past 15 years. And I think it's really important to remember that, you know, there are two things happening at the same time. Religious life is shrinking dramatically because that giant, you know, set of generations that came in mid 20th century is now going on to their eternal reward. But at the same time, new life is happening in religious life. It does continue. The story isn't over. So the shrinkage and the new life are both going on. So, and then you all can see that the women's snapshot in 2019, when we gathered this data, was around 1,000 women in formation in 2018. And then about 400 people each year begin the process of initial formation, men and women, and around 200 each year make perpetual profession. Those are very rough, round figures, but you know, it might vary just a little bit under or over. It's been going on for a large number of years, and we've been following that data. 200 and 400 is actually not from our study, but we presented it with the study because we think it's relevant. So next slide, please.
We're going to look at the characteristics of newer members. And indeed, diversity is the hallmark of these groups. Note the diagram on this slide, and the advantage of having this be a Zoom conference is that you can pull it way up close to you so you can actually read all those numbers and titles. This is a diagram about the racial and ethnic background of those who have entered during that time period. And just take a moment to look at it, please. We will be revisiting this diagram a little bit later. Like many communities, my own community has been blessed with a change in demographics. We were almost 100% Caucasian for the first 120 years of our community history. And now we're blessed with Hispanic and Vietnamese women who comprise about 20% of our membership. They are a blessing. There is always a challenge of interculturation, and that is a two-way street, not just inculturation. But the effort has its rewards for sure. Some more information about them is that the average age of those entering is certainly higher than it was 50 years ago. This is good in so many ways. They're very mature and responsible. The complication that comes along with that, of course, is that many times they have education debt or they own property and investments, and the community has to figure out how does that work now that they're becoming part of the community. As you can see from this, Catholic education is still a great introduction to the spirituality that calls forth a sense of mission and ministry. So one conclusion is that our Catholic institutions serve us well. These respondents are highly educated, as you can see. In another survey to vocation directors about 8 or so years ago, we learned that a big hindrance to those wishing to enter was education debt. That resulted in the creation of a new entity by NRVC, and it is called the National Fund for Catholic Religious Vocations. We shortened that to call it NFCRV. And briefly, the goal is that members of NRVC can apply to the NFCRV for a scholarship or a grant to repay the loan for individual applicants. And that's done on a quarterly basis as long as that person stays in formation. So for more information about that, for anybody who's interested, just go to the NFCRV website. Invitation is still very key in awakening a call to individuals about religious life. I know when I was vocation director, I heard more than once someone say something like, quote, "No one ever asked or suggested that to me." And so it was disheartening to know that all it would take is a mention of, have you ever considered? So that's always important for us to remember, that invitation is still important, and communicators have a great role to play there. Sometimes families are reluctant or reticent to give their support, but usually after the person enters, or even when the family meets the community, there's a big change of heart. So that's encouraging as well. Discernment takes time, and good discernment always takes considerable time. From reading their comments, I would say that these newer members, entrants, are like pioneers, and they're pioneers to how religious life is developing now, and they're up for the challenge. They are eager to make a go of it, and it's very encouraging. Next slide, please.
So one of the things that we wanted to know when we did this was what the draw was for people. What was the attraction to religious life? And as you can see from this slide, the attractions to religious life almost all center on wanting a greater spiritual depth connected to community. So the top three, spirituality, charism, and mission, are really all about having that intense relationship with God, intense prayer life, and also having a chance to do that in community. And people see community for what it is. It is what is distinctive about religious life. They can live an intense spiritual life and do daily mass and pray the office as single women, but entering a religious community allows you to do it in community. And the other thing that people expressed, and this often came through in the narratives in those 13 focus groups, was that healthy and holy community life for newer members involves praying together in various forms depending on the charisma of their institute, celebrating holidays and feast days as a community, and living under the same roof and sharing meals. And the younger that they were, the more large the community that they hoped to be in. But I don't even know that it's about a number. It's about having a quality of religious life in a communal sense that really is significant to newer members and to the people who would consider entering a community. You can go to the next slide, please.
All right, we're going to return again and look at the cultural diversity and interculturality and intergenerational aspects of religious life today. And as you take a good look at those diagrams, it's interesting to note that with this group of new entrants, 24% were born outside of the United States. That's a pretty big chunk of folks. Here in these diagrams, you can see the ethnic backgrounds as well as the first language statistics. It is interesting to note that of those who completed the survey, 50 different first languages were listed. Imagine the linguistic capabilities of these folks. I want to share a comment from Sister Constance Veit. She's the communication director for the Little Sisters of the Poor. I read an article that she wrote, and she said that after viewing the 2020 NRVC study on religious life today, she was delighted in reading this from one of the newer members, quote, "It is beautiful to have all different generations and ethnicities in one community, in one house, if we allow ourselves to see the beauty." I thought that was really telling. I think it will be interesting to see how these charts will change over the next 10 to 15 years. Next slide, please.
So another aspect of the study was to find out, what it was that people really appreciated about religious life. And one of those things was the commitment to live simply and in solidarity with the poor, and to be doing it together. Again, back to that whole communal aspect. So for women, prayer and the way that they saw the vows and the gospel values being lived out when they had that face-to-face contact with people among members, the way that people were actually living, walking the talk, was important to them. Living at or near a ministry site and living in a simple lifestyle in solidarity with the poor and marginalized was also ranked as either somewhat or very important. Those were important values. And then thirdly, we really saw this in those focus groups where people had very in-depth and very heartfelt, pouring their souls out, really, conversations about their experiences in religious life. People kept saying over and over that they wanted to see their communities be bold, take risks, and work collaboratively with other communities and lay partners. And I know all of us hear this constantly, that collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. And yet it really is the heart of our ministry and vocations. Our vocation ministers work together collaboratively quite a bit. And it's also, I know it's also going on quite a lot among the CWR communities. There's a lot of ministry to migrants at the Mexican border, human trafficking ministry, and ministry with advocating at the United Nations. A lot of those things are happening at an international and national or even regional, but collaborative level. So it's the Franciscans and Benedictines and Jesuits, and it's everybody, working, men and women together. That is an attraction, actually, and it is what people see as the future in religious life. Our younger members are saying that. Next slide, please.
And I think that that's a really key message that we have here at NRVC, is that religious life does have a future, and we're all playing a part in carrying it on. And we appreciate what all you do get that message out there as well. And on this slide, I'll give you a half a minute to read it. Just a couple of the comments that were gleaned from the focus groups of these young folks or these newer members. I'm not sure exactly how old they were. So if you just take a moment to read through those. And like I said, these are just a couple from the full report. So it would be good if you're interested to check that out as well. On a personal level, I was particularly touched and challenged by the last statement. I thought that was really profound and beautiful. We need to believe in the future of religious life as much as the newer members do, that is for sure. It's true that religious life will be different in the future, but different is not necessarily a bad thing. Next slide, please.
So we also, of course, wanted to know how people found their communities. I mean, finding out that religious life is even an option in today's world is a challenge. And I know all of you in CWR are promoting religious life at large, but also we want to know, how do people find their individual communities? And we found out there are many forms of acquaintance. You'll see that I went and put a little underline under 4 of these 10 forms of acquaintance. All of those 4 are related to online content. Online content is essential. I think you already know that as vocation or as communications ministers. For sure, the younger generation is expecting to see things online, and they will evaluate the health and relevance of your community by whether you portray that in your electronic communications. At the same time, a lot of communication also has to happen in person, because nobody joins a religious community just because they found it on the internet. They find you maybe on a website or through social media, but then it's where the magic is really happening is in person, when they actually meet people in your community and start to form relationships. So that solidifying of relationships and initiating of relationships can happen online. And the in-person contact is going to also solidify and further the relationship. So it needs to happen in both ways. And I often advise people that it's smart to have your vocation communications happening online, driving people to a face-to-face type of, whether it's a retreat or a talk that someone's giving. It doesn't have to be vocation related. And in fact, something that isn't vocation related is often a lot less threatening, because you can just kind of blend in. You're just there for the St. Patrick's Day celebration or whatever. And it's a way to get to know people and build on those relationships. Next slide, please.
Please take a moment to capture the information and implications of this slide. And then also note at the bottom of the slide are the categories of the ages of newer members. Again, there's a wide difference in the ages. Those are color-coded on the chart. So as we look at the chart on the far left, I call that group number 1. It's not a surprise, given the information that we have from the study about the importance of Catholic education and experiences with the religious in Catholic institutions. So that was pretty even amongst the newer members, how that happens. But if you look over at the far right, I'm just going to mention that that seems to be a great way for those who are interested or beginning to feel like maybe they should be checking out vocations, that they can do some research without being known and showing their hand. And I would just throw in here that Vision magazine is an excellent resource, as I'm sure the vocation directors of your community know, and that there's I don't know, a feature on the website of the magazine that is called Vocation Match, and it's incredibly popular and helpful to people who are looking for religious life, because it asks lots of questions that helps them to sift out different communities and to go towards the ones that match their draw. Going back to the second one from the left, that one seems to indicate how important it is to have excellent content and formatting on our social media. It seems that it should be a priority, at least in reaching out to everyone except maybe the Vatican Council II people. They don't seem to be too interested in doing social media. The next one over, I think, is one that it also indicates knowing what type of information is necessary and important, how it's packaged and what gets their attention. So it is important to review, I think, your presentation of the community via this medium. Again, personal contact is vital. I know it's not your responsibility, but conveying useful and inspiring information and an invitation to whatever events or ways that the vocation director or leadership people in your community would like to have communicated is important, so that those inquiries continue to be made to the community. Now, I'm not a webmaster or website designer, and if you're not either, it might be good to have a focus group of young people. If you can, those interested in religious life would be ideal, but they would be able to assist you in noting what is attractive to them about websites or social media devices, and what's not attractive or what's not appealing to them, so that that can be good input for you. Next slide, please.
Carol, if I can,
Go ahead.
if I can interject just for a moment, Dusty has a question about the data that we're looking at, if there is a disaggregated version of the reports that showed differences between women religious and men religious.
Yes, there are some breakdowns. I know in that chart, or the stats that Sister Charlene just gave, that particular set of data isn't broken down right there for men versus women. I don't think there was a huge difference in terms of use of electronic media between the genders. You'll see a little bit more distinction on things like the men seem to be more focused on what's the ministry of the community. But the report does, when there are gender differences, if you go to the full report and scroll through it, you'll see it will break down by specific, by gender, some of those differences. Where the gender is really not significantly different, they're probably not making note of it. They mostly made note where it applied.
Thank you.
So a few tips, and we're only going to give you about 3 because we wanted to try to keep this relatively short. And this, I know I'm sort of stating the obvious that you already know, but building your relationship with your leaders and your vocation directors is just essential. And in this article that the Sisters of St. Francis of the Holy Cross in Green Bay, Wisconsin wrote for us, they wrote it with their communications director about building, basically just working together effectively. They talked about how their monthly meetings were the glue in their relationship, and that helped them to build trust and respect and understanding of each other's priorities and pressures in each person's job, and that they really worked hard to learn from their mistakes and celebrate together their accomplishments. A lot of our members don't have a communications director, so I always think the people who have CWR members are the lucky ones. Next slide, please.
So internal pieces must be in place, and oh, how nice it would be to have a well-oiled machine with all aspects engaged in inspiring and welcoming inquirers. And that is not a simple task or one goal that's easily accomplished. This slide gives some general concepts that are integral to vital vocation communication programming as you work with your vocation director and leadership person in your community. I know it's not your task to be that person to take care of all these aspects in community life, but assisting the vocation director and the leadership person in various ways is your task. Perhaps you already meet regularly or maybe just occasionally. Consider questions that you may want to ask of them and consider how your role can enhance their goals in contacting and communicating with an ever widening circle of folks. Sometimes creativity comes from outside the people who are actually responsible for doing the task of inviting. So let your creativity flow and help them figure out maybe new ways to reach out and contact. And maybe schedule meetings to get a clearer sense of what you can do and what is expected. So next slide, please.
And our last tip is really to manage your expectations. And we do want to emphasize that discernment tends to be slow and uneven, but it always enhances the church. Any woman who comes to your community and wants to ask the question in depth, how can I best use my talents and my gifts to serve God and others? They're going to be better for it. That will always serve the church, no matter where that young woman goes in life. Also expect to have the whole community involved. Vocation ministers always want the full community to not just support through prayer, but show up for special events, show up where young people are worshiping, allow them to come have dinner with you. There may be 1,000 different ways given which community it is, but the whole community will be able to be involved and should be involved in inviting the next generation in. And then finally, a lot of times I'll hear, or other people in the NRVC staff will hear, oh, my community is so old and they don't really get involved with young people anymore. That was a long time ago. But it really is more about attitude than age. And I think all of you have met amazing women in their 80s and 90s and even beyond who are very attractive people to young people. And that age difference isn't necessarily a barrier. Our recent members expressed how over and over in that study how much love they have for the wisdom figures in their communities. That is a constant refrain. And those wisdom figures and those people who are living their vocations with joy at any age are always an attraction. So the attitude, this is a picture here of Sister Lorraine. I don't have her last name, but she's with the SSJs in Rochester. And you can see that young women love to be around her and she loves to be with them. And that personal contact, I'm not even sure what they're doing. Could have been a Christmas cookie decoration for all I know, but they have a good time together. So that is all I want to present, or Sister Charlene and I wanted to present for, oh, I'm sorry, Sister Charlene, you have your last slide on resources. So let me not steal your thunder. Next slide, please.
So on this last slide is a listing of the resources that would be helpful to you in your mining for the nuggets that were presented in this research study. And it could be very useful to you for your communicating with your vocation director and leadership person. Now, either these links were already sent to you or they're going to be sent to you. So you'll have them. Enjoy the mining. that can go on. And perhaps a new challenge for you would be to write about the community if you don't do it on a regular basis already, both in the Catholic newspaper and in otherwise. Sometimes we communities, sisters, are kind of shy, and we sometimes are our own best kept secret. If your community is like mine, the sisters are not quick to write about what they're doing or what outreach they're doing. So I hope that all of this presentation was helpful to you. If we can at NRVC can be of further help to you, we're most eager to do that. And before I turn this back to Rob, I want to ask Carol if she has any additional comments or thoughts that she'd like to share.
Just this was our special edition on In Horizon, our journal about the study. So that breaks it down in another way. We have so many different resources. It's almost going to bore you for me to show you all of them, but this is another one. It's our booklet. This one's beautiful. There's a lot of good data, but also, you know, just an uplifting read because a lot of young people and their experiences and hopefulness about religious life are reflected there. This one's perfect for people who love the numbers, and it's broken down in beautiful color-coded charts and graphs. That's our infographic. All of those you can download for free from our website. You can order printed copies from our website. And then the story map, which you can go to that short web address or just go to our website and it'll direct you there. That also gives you another form for if you want to go through this data at your leisure. And of course, the full, you know, Adobe PDF, 157 pages worth of the report is also available for easy download. So we hope that it's helpful to you for understanding what's been drawing people into religious life and what their experiences are like. And we're always happy to field your questions. So write to Sister Charlene anytime, write to me anytime, or call us.
I would say that Carol has been working with this since the study was done, and I don't think she quite has it memorized, but she is the expert, and she did a lot of the compiling of these resources for people. So she knows it pretty well inside and out, better than I do at this point. So I don't want to discourage anybody from contacting me, but I know that Carol just has it on her fingertips. So God bless you all for attending today.
And thank you for all the work that you do. We know how essential good communications is. It's kind of half of the battle with vocations, because if people don't know that you even exist, then they can't choose that life. So thank you for the really amazing work that all of you are doing.
Thank you both. And just to reiterate what we often do, if you're following along in the chat, Brian has posted several different links there. And of course, we will continue to share the links after the webinar as well. Like we've said, there's tons of information available there. And I'd highly recommend visiting the NRVC site and downloading those materials. We do have a few questions popping up, and this is a good opportunity to pop something in the Q&A or into the chat if you'd like to. So if we can maybe address a few of these questions. One person asked, is there any data regarding the impact of paid advertising among the younger women, apart from vision? And I'm not sure what GRM is, actually, I'm sorry. She says that she's heard that many communities are only advertising on social media and dropping traditional paid advertising. So have any thoughts about where people are landing with their advertising for vocations?
Well, the NRVC publishes Vision. I'm the managing editor of Vision. So I'm obviously going to have a bias about continuing to advertise in really what is the premier package that shows an overview of religious life, which is Vision both in its print form and its online form. There is data on the Vision website, and Patrice Tui, who is the publisher for it on behalf of the NRVC, could go into greater depth. There is some data regarding advertising in the overall study. It doesn't go into a lot of detail. And I also want to just, mention that in addition to advertising, being one of the things that is looked at, did you find out about your community through an ad? A lot of time, I do question, my goodness, would I remember that I had seen an ad? Maybe not. There is data in there, but one of the things about print data, or if you're doing any other type of even Google ads and things like that, is it is often difficult to really trace a direct line between person found out about such and such and 5 years later a person enters, because Sister Charlene, from working with people in discernment, it's a very it's a twisty, curvy path, and there needs to be awareness. And I do think sometimes general awareness is harder to count in terms of, we did this many years of ads, this is how many women we got in. It's not quite that clean cut, but it's essential to create that awareness. And without it, people won't even know that you are out there.
And again, I think that this whole notion of some personal contact whenever possible is very important as well. And so the message is, if I know COVID has thrown a monkey wrench in a lot of vocation ministry efforts, but to be able to go where young people are, and maybe even not so young, but that is so important to be seen, and to have even more than one of you be seen from the community is very helpful as well.
Also, I can't remember if I mentioned it, but I know I can provide a link to the data about advertisers that Vision provides. That's not maybe answering the person's direct question, but Vision does post information about who, I believe, overall who is advertising. And maybe it's actually, I think what we have posted is information about the people coming to our website that we have a lot of detail about. And we also have an events posting on Vision where we try to help, and this isn't restricted to advertisers, it's for everyone, where we try to drive people to those live events that you're doing. So the Vision Vocation event page is also something that we always encourage.
I'm wondering, Gina asks a question that's similar. You may have already answered it, but she asks, are there any particular online outlets that you feel reach the target audience that would be best to advertise in? So any media recommendations of what we should be looking at? Besides Vision, of course, that's a given.
That's so sophisticated compared to what a lot of people are doing, which I often think, gosh, look at this website. They could take it up a notch. I can't even figure out how to contact the vocation director. And that to me tells me that they're probably not in the market for having new entrants. But I have to think about that. Sister Charlene, do you have any thoughts on other places other than the ones NRVC sponsors that people are finding fruitful for advertising?
No, I really don't know what the latest best practices are. Maybe some of the people who are attending this workshop can give us some ideas of where they have had some experience with advertising. They could fill that in the chat. We can all benefit from knowing what works for them. I know that the Vision does do that posting of all events that people would like to advertise, which is a great service.
I think some groups do Google ads, and I suppose you could, just do a Google on women's, how to be a nun or something like that, and see who pops up and ask those communities. Because I do, I go in and check that sort of thing every now and then just to see what might I find if I Google how to become a nun. Because really a lot of young women have no idea where to start. They've maybe never met a nun, but they heard about it and they're curious and they feel something in their heart is restless and they're looking. And it's trying to make contact with those women who are in a discerning mode. And the ages when that happens tends to be just what you would expect, college. A lot of young women in college that's when they're making major life decisions, but also well into their 20s, 30s. Our vocation ministers get inquiries from people in their 40s and 50s, and some communities will accept people at that age. So, how to reach them, what are they on Pinterest? Are they on, which platforms already from knowing social media that they're on? But it is a complex thing. And I think advertising is only really one step of it. I do see a lot of creative, great things happening with people just doing the rudimentary communication to a database that they've built up from contacts from their high school, contacts from their colleges. They send them a little, what is it? We just saw, Sister Charlene, that great video that the UK people were doing of finding God in Advent. It was a daily reminder of God in Advent. I love them. They're like a priest or nun every day saying, here's a way that I find God in Advent. And it's younger religious that they feature. And they send that to people that they have acquired those contacts through a whole lot of, just day-to-day work out there, getting to know young people in campus ministries. It's a lot of that legwork that I know you as communications directors aren't going to do it, but if somebody's in those ministries with contact with young adults, that's who should be trying to feed you contact information.
And I do think that when people are beginning to search and they don't know a religious community, they do some broad fishing on the web. So I know from going to websites myself that it's not always found that the vocation or discernment or how to contact the vocation director is really clear. The banner across the top of the website does not sometimes include that a real obvious way to contact. Sometimes it will be within ministries. And so you click on that and the menu comes down and you find vocations there or somewhere else kind of hidden. So my encouragement would be that some attractive statement about discerning vocation would be good to have right on the banner. That is the first thing you see when you open a website.
Not all of our members can see this, I think. In the Q&A, Gina responded about using banner ads on NCR and using a Nun's Life blog e-newsletter to advertise. And Sister Beth in the chat mentioned, actually, she's wondering about how effective GSR, Global Sisters Report, is at attracting young people to religious life. So actually, I threw that word young in there. I don't know why, I just did.
Well, the recent entrants are younger more than they are older. If you look at the average age, I think it comes out to 28.
Yeah.
That is averaging in men and women together. It's not that dramatically different between the two.
Okay. Something that you had said earlier about the love for the wisdom figures in those communities, that there's kind of this connection there between the younger folks and the wisdom figures. Do you have any data about vocations advertising where you're using your community as you authentically are? So here's an older looking ad with older members in it versus your younger members that are maybe being utilized a lot because you only have a few of them, so they're winding up in everything. Or
Yeah.
maybe you're even resorting to stock photography. Are there any trends along those lines about what communities use or what is most effective to use?
I don't know of any, but I would recommend a good mix of folks, to, as you said, portray the community as it actually is, because they're gonna find out, very soon you're pulling their leg.
Yes, authenticity is what people are attracted to. So you'll know what's authentic, and seeing the, one or two young people all the time without any older women who are maybe the majority is maybe not necessarily what you want to repeat all the time. And sometimes I think it's okay to also have images that depict the kind of women who just enjoy being around the nuns. Maybe they want to be members, maybe they don't, but they showed up for the gardening day, or they showed up for the work with the homeless day. And sometimes you'll have a greater racial range of people too. And that's, Sister Charlene was saying, a lot of our people who are most interested in joining our religious community, they're not Caucasian, and they want to see themselves, or they think they don't belong. So if you never show an Asian or Black or Latina, then the people who are seeing that think, well, then I guess I don't fit. So it's important to maybe just show a range of the kind of young people that might be in your college. That would probably be, and at events that you're hosting. They don't have to be people who are members. They could be people who simply are friends of the nuns, and that can be a wide range of people, because I do think for us to be able to break down some of the racial barriers, we're going to need to broaden, and I'm saying this as a Caucasian woman, we need to broaden the kind of people we show as prospective members.
I think it would be interesting as well to, I don't know how you would do this exactly, but to have an opportunity for the newer members to describe their activities or their interests in some of the wisdom figures in the community, as well as give a report somehow or other. Yeah, this is up to you to be creative. Somehow how those wisdom figures are feeling blessed and encouraged by those who are entering now. I think that kind of back and forth or dual presentation within one article or something would be very interesting to the readers.
Or if you don't have younger members, even just having young people who are making contact. I mean, maybe you're starting without having had a new entrant for a long time, and it is life-giving for older people to be around young people and see that they still care about the nuns. They still find a lot of value in the nuns. And, there's all kinds of programs that our members have been involved with that involve, say, prayer partners between the high school and the convent, or I don't know, Sister Charlene, I'm drawing a blank, but there are a lot of different ways that young people have daily, or not daily, but maybe every once a quarter, even a human contact in the same room with some of the sisters that are in the nursing home even, but bringing together the young and the old is life-giving, not only for the young people who are exposed to these amazing women who have given so much to the church and through their lives and their ministry, but also for the women to feel that their lives have value, and these young people actually do want to hear their stories and relish the way that they have experienced prayer and changes in the church and all these things.
Someone just mentioned on the chat that having people tell their vocation story, their call story, young and old, is very interesting. And the contrast between their experiences can be very helpful in helping people appreciate the challenges and the struggles that people face, either from family or other circumstances as they discern their vocation. It can be very helpful for just kind of enlarging the heart of other members around. So I would second that motion to have the stories told.
Thank you. We're nearing the top of the hour, so I want to kind of put it out there for our last call if there are any other questions. I did want to ask, if you had any tips as far as how communicators might most easily connect with vocation directors. I'm sure their schedules are pretty wacky and at all hours, and any advice as to how we can help our colleagues?
Get that relationship forged somehow. Even a Zoom meeting is, because I know sometimes you're not even right in the same physical location, right? Especially now. But it's true that sometimes vocation directors, they go off their merry way and it doesn't even occur to them, geez, I have this professional who knows a lot about communications, whose skill I could be drawing upon. But I almost feel like I'll make that introduction for you. I'll make them. No, but Sister Charlene, do you have any ideas on what would best?
Well, just off the top of my head, I was thinking that having a panel of communicators make presentations to when at least our organization has what we call member areas, and they meet either once or twice or 3 times, 4 times a year, depending, that to have not just a one-sided presentation, but to have the communicators share what they know is very helpful about getting the word out, and then to give the vocation directors also equal time to say what they understand would be the ways of good communication, and ask, brainstorm together what's working in all the different communities that would be represented, so that people can go home with new ideas, and maybe it might jumpstart a divergent thinking about an approach that is being made.
A great idea.
Yeah.
We could do like a little summit.
Yes.
Well, our regional groups do have regular meetings, and they are often wondering, all right, who could we bring in who would really help us take things up a notch? And really, if they brought in a few CWR people, I think it could be a very enriching. I know that actually that's happened here, and I'm in region, it's not region 6 anymore. It's called the Great Lakes, Lake Erie, or something like that. I should know the names of my own regions, but
He's in Toledo, Ohio.
I'm in Toledo, Ohio, and I think it's the Ohio River Great Lakes member area is the official name, something like that. But we do, we have had meetings where we've brought in professional communicators, and the vocation directors always really eat that up because most of them have no training.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, and maybe that's a homework assignment or a resolution for the new year. In January, go to lunch with your vocation director
and your leadership person.
Yes.
they are the ones that set the tone and really give you the funding, right?
Right, control the budget.
The time. I know a lot of you are pressed for time, just even prioritizing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's
what
so different now with COVID too. So God bless you all and all your efforts.
and that's a perfect segue as we talk about time. We're already just past the top of the hour, so I want to thank you both for not only the presentation but the conversation afterwards. There was a lot of great ideas, and it certainly got my wheels turning. So thank you very much for your time today. And as we traditionally do, we'll have a survey that follows and other resources from this webinar available, including the video on the CWR website. We have another session tomorrow featuring our CWR award recipients panel. And then we have a bit of a Christmas break and come back January 19th for a panel with UISG about building a communications department or office. Remember to share about the new member initiatives, so your vocation colleagues and your justice coordinators and et cetera can also become members of CWR. And remember to get connected via the Discord app. And until next time, which is really tomorrow, we'll see you soon. So thank you very much, everyone.